and we're ready.
Okay, we're ready to go. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the IID DRC meeting of July 15th, 2022. First item on the agenda is call to order. Roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gans?
Present.
Mr. Barron?
Me? Do you mean me? Present.
Oh, okay, Mr. Burr, present. Mr. Barrett?
Present.
Ms. Schambach, she recused herself. Mr. Biner, he let me know he was not going to be able to make it. Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes. Here.
Okay, thank you. We have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Item 2 is approval of legal action report of May 19, 2022 IID DRC meeting. And is there a motion on the minutes of this meeting for approval? Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, who made the motion? I didn't catch that.
John Burr made the motion, and who seconded?
Eric Barrett.
Eric.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 3, which I appreciate this being moved into further up the agenda, is a call to the audience. Individuals may speak up to 3 minutes. Any calls from the audience? I do not hear anything. I'll wait for another 15 seconds here.
We could always do another one at the end if more people show up.
We can do that. Okay, let's move on to item 4, which is IID-22-01, Ugly But Honest Pizza, P2 2SA00204, and DP21-0171. Item A is preliminary staff remarks.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This application is for the Ugly But Honest Pizza, which is located in the location of the former Ugly But Honest gas station at the 5 Points intersection. And the applicant is coming in for a change of use from the general merchandise sales, which is the gas station, to a pizzeria, which will include indoor and outdoor dining and a little space for a bar. So as an accessory use. They're proposing to maintain the existing historic structure with its awning on site, and they're going to revitalize it. And this structure is a contributor to the Armory Park National Historic District. So they're also going to be adding a new steel shade canopy for outdoor dining. In their parking plan, they're providing ADA parking on Stone Avenue on the right-of-way, and they're proposing to establish a parking agreement with the property across from 6th Avenue that they're going to be redeveloping for parking out of, I think it's about 31 spaces. Out of those, 13 spaces are going to be dedicated to the Ugly But Honest Pizza, and they're proposing to utilize the on-street parking also along 6th Avenue and Stone Avenue. As part of their proposal, they're also planning on moving the existing Ugly But Honest historic sign about 22 feet to the north from its current location. And I have here in the agenda the relocation of the Cesar Chavez sculpture, but the applicant has clarified that that's not part of their purview. That's somebody else's, decision, and that's that. So through the IID, the applicant is hoping for the IID to be approved to allow for the proposed parking setup, and also to modify the landscape and screening requirements per UDC, and also to modify the requirements for refuse collection. For this, I have to add the applicant has been having constant communication with environmental services this past few days, trying to find the best way to set up the refuse collection in a way that environmental services will be satisfied. So I think they have reached a common understanding, and so I'll let the applicant explain that further. And also, as part of the requirement, they're proposing to reduce the required setbacks as required by the UDC from both 6th Avenue and Stone Avenue. The design professional has reviewed this project a couple of times, and at this point, he's been recommending approval. Back in June, because the property zone age historic, it has to, he had to go through review by the Armory Park Historic Zone Advisory Board, and they met and they discussed, and they recommended approval with 3 conditions. One of the conditions for the originally planned square wave corrugated metal to be replaced by S-wave corrugated metal to be more compatible with the historic neighborhood. Also, another condition was to reduce the height of the proposed new shade structure from 10 feet to 9 feet and 6 inches to provide for better visibility of the historic structure and the canopy behind it. And also the third condition was for the historic sign, the Ugly Barones historic sign, to be relocated as proposed by the applicant with the same orientation, as long as it was not going to lose its historic status per SHPO. And we have here with us Jody Brown, the Historic Preservation Officer. She can help us answer questions about that and any other historic preservation components of the proposal. The PRS, the Tucson Pima Historical Commission Plan Review Subcommittee reviewed this project yesterday, and they also recommended approval. I have my notes here as presented by the applicant at their meeting yesterday with the same condition the Historic Advisory Board included in their motion for the sign to be relocated as long as it was not going to lose its historic designation. And in regards of the other 2 conditions by the advisory board, the applicant has revised his plans, and that's what he presented yesterday at the PRS. So they were okay with what he proposed. Another item, it was not part of the motion, but at this historic advisory board meeting, it was requested from the applicant that when they came to you, to the IID DRC, he would show you how mechanical equipment was going to be screened and the type of materials that were going to be utilized. So the applicant did present that to the PRS yesterday, and the PRS was okay with it. I hope I'm not forgetting something. There's a lot of details going on with this project. So the DRC is familiar with with the purview, Mr. Chair, but I have it here on the screen. And at this point, I don't have any more unless there's any questions for me. And the applicant is ready for a presentation.
Okay. Maria, do we want to have Jody Brown comment at some point on this, but before or after the project presentation? Is that
it's up to the chair, and it's up to Jody. You know, if she wants to kick in with any comments, Jody, please do so.
Well, I will note that you have May 14th, 2022, but it was actually July 14th.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for the note.
But I'm available to answer any questions that you need.
Okay. Well, then we'll go to item B right now, the project presentation by applicant. And if there are more than one, please identify yourself as you start to speak. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. I think. One moment, please. All right, there we go. Is my screen presenting?
Yes, I see it.
Mr. Chair, community members, thank you for participating and assisting the community at large for evaluating these projects. So I'm David Schambach. I'm the principal architect for David E. Schambach Architects. I'm representing the restaurateur, Nick Headings, who also owns Upper Crust Pizza and I think Sabino Canyon Pizza. So he's an experienced restaurateur. And Larry Kapler, who's the developer at 5 Points, Baffert at 5 Points, as well as the property owner of Wadsley Motors and the major leaseholder for what we're calling the Point Project, which is the ugly but honest gas station project. So neither one of them were able to be here today, but representing them, I'd just like to say, as far as the vision is concerned, this really has to do with Nick Headings and his vision for having a restaurant in the downtown area. He's passionate about craft. He's passionate about downtown Tucson. And when he was given the opportunity to start thinking about opening up a beer garden and a pizzeria in this unique little building, he jumped at the chance and has been working with Larry Kapler over the last almost like a year to have this project.
Hey, Dave, I am here. This is Nick speaking. I'm on the phone, so just wanted to let you know.
Okay. So, so as you can see from the visual that we're starting with, we're basically wanting to turn this the beer garden and the restaurant into basically an outdoor living space, including a representation of an urban garden environment, utilizing water harvesting techniques, shade structures, and create an island within this important location of the downtown area. Moving forward, I mean, the history of this whole area, this particular node within the community is very interesting. I love sharing this graphic that my people put together. But as some of you may or may not know, the early building, which was the gas station itself, was basically a modular erector set that was sold by the oil company to a franchisee to go ahead and build erect these little assembled metal buildings. So in the course of its existence, it was a period that was probably built in the 1930s. There's some bigger and smaller versions of this particular type of building. The Wadsley family's been working and owning a car dealership in this area for decades. So they were the first people that started really working with the site, using it for advertising, use it for a gas station and space associated with their dealership. It appears that the sign probably was installed somewhere in the 50s. It's the sign itself has actually got a little bit of a notoriety associated with it. It was seen in some movies and was used for some album covers throughout the years. At the same time, the Wasleys had their family had been running businesses. They're associated with basically these two properties. Passed away in about 1980. His stepson took over the property and has owned it ever since until his passing, in which at that time the properties passed over to the Wasley lot, and access to the point reverted over to Larry Kapler in around 2000, I think probably 2015 or so. Most recently, infrastructure and art projects have been added to that intersection, and which is added to some dynamic aspects to the whole corner. Larry Kapler and Nick Headings have been imagining the future of the Wasley Auto site and the Ugly But Honest restaurant. Currently, as most of you know, the building has been vacant for at least 10 or 15 years. It's had a smattering of different uses that never really took care of the building. Currently, the building has basically been kept in some kind of stasis by Larry, just keeping the roof from leaking and that kind of thing. And now they're ready for a full-on renovation to turn it into the Ugly But Honest project. Just sharing a little bit of some of the more detailed photos. You can sort of get a sense of like what the building was like when it probably was initially fairly new. There was no awning over the gas pumps at probably its initial construction. That was added later. You can sort of see the different the Ugly and Honest moniker took on a significance for the Wasley family over the course of the years. You sort of see the different conditions of the project or the building as time moved forward. Existing conditions. So basically to give you a sense of where this sits within the overlay districts and some of the history associated with that. Some of you also may not know that initially the point was not part of a historic zone. It was traded for removing the section of the property where the Baffert at 5 Points is being built, and is currently now included within this historic zone. So you can sort of see the different components, the non-contributing and contributing properties. So this is the overlay of like what we're working with as far as the historic and zoning issues associated with the property. This is some current existence the existing conditions of the property as it sits now. Basically, it's been stabilized to the point where at least it's not leaking. The west elevation and along where the Alamo apartments are, north elevation, east elevation, things have been boarded up and repaired. Sort of a view of the intersection at 5 Points from across the street, and then interesting sort of juxtapositioning of lights and signs and statues. But the Ugly But Honest sign and Cesar Chavez statue as they're currently located within the property. As you can see, there's quite a bit of clutter happening right in this area. Design precedences, we didn't really have a very large development zone, but we felt that we could pull from what we have as far as what we were going to need for this particular project. just a simple metal picket fence designed for the perimeter. The sign is going to become still maintain a prominent feature within the building. There's some just rudimentary steel shade structures around, metal sash windows. This is actually from an earlier photo from the Ugly But Honest station. Some tensile structures associated with different properties, corrugated metal, bike parking, landscape, and then additional landscaping associated with it. So landscape is an important aspect of our design. We don't have to work with as far as width is concerned, but we do have a rain garden, and we're really trying to create an oasis with a combination of desert grasses and climbing vines. So the proposed design, we're including this as just as an example of the various ways people have used gas stations and adapt them for a different reuse. Funny enough, most of them being restaurants. Presta Coffee, which is in Iron Horse. This is the funniest little building, but this is right off of Stone, of course. The PJ Subs, it's at Tucson Boulevard and 6th. Sparkle Cleaners, the Gray's Burger on Broadway, and ATL Wings. So all of these are good examples of I feel the successful and contributing adaptive reuses of these interesting gas stations structures. So our materials right now that we're working with, basically we're going to be repairing and painting the existing building using the primary white and the blues and reds that seem to be prevalent throughout the advertising associated with the structure. Metal sash windows, an example of a steel shade structure that we're going to be using in order to sort of deal with rainwater harvesting and actually protect patrons from the rain during the rainy season. We are planning on using this S-curve corrugated polycarbonate or Lexan panels that are translucent as a primary, and then a secondary surface that we're planning on putting in underneath these panels would be a variety of shade canopies that can be removed during the winter and installed during the summer when more shade would be required to keep the patrons a little bit more comfortable. Then we have planters and landscape materials that are pretty typical. Native vegetation, decomposed granite, some short rusted panels, steel associated with the trellises. And then we are showing a mechanical screen on the roof. Right now we've got a Belvedere short rib panel, which we selected that just because there were certain aspects of it that seemed to be linear that we wanted to maintain a horizontal feel to the overall building. And then of course, a composition of landscape sidewalks and buffers. Currently, we are working with a young man named Jeff Rowdy, who's part of who's the owner and designer associated with Drylands Designs. He specializes in rainwater harvesting and native plants, and so he's working with us. We've got a basic plant selection that he's planning on installing within the design. We will be providing a full landscape package as we finalize our site development package over the course of the next few weeks. So the major, as Maria had indicated, there's a couple major issues that we're dealing with. One of them is, and this started out as a request from the city of Tucson of whether we would be able to, would be willing to actually relocate the Ugly But Honest sign. As you can see from this current condition photo, it's a very unfortunate juxtaposition between this sign and the Cesar Chavez statue. We're, as you can see from this diagram, we basically are planning on moving it 20 feet or approximately 22 feet to the north. We're hoping that we feel that moving this, even that amount of distance, is really going to help alleviate the visual clutter associated with this, and actually help the sign stand a little bit more on its own. As you can see from these historic photos, you know, there was not nearly the amount of clutter associated with when it was first installed. This is the overall site plan. As you can see, there's actually a couple different layers of what's happening here. This is the actual point, Stone 6th Avenue. These are the gateway arches that are associated with all the different neighborhoods. This is the building itself. This is the awning. We're planning on putting a bar section right underneath the awning where the pumps used to be, creating a little bit of a loose seating area and a bar seating right through here. Right through here is the main awning structure, and as you can see, these trapezoidal shapes are representing the tensile structures that will be stretched underneath the corrugated Lexan panels during the course of the summer. You can sort of see the relocation of the sign, and our overall design. You can see this circle right here. Basically, what we're doing is we're incorporating the sign in such a way that it has space around it with no structure around it. So there'll be I think it's about a 10-foot diameter hole, and then the sign will protrude through the hole, sitting on its own, separated from the awning structure. Then we're cutting off our structure right through here. We're planning on putting some bicycle parking right here and creating a little bit more of a pedestrian refuge in this area. We have micro basins along their perimeter edge. This is where we're planning on putting the desert grasses and some climbing vines and shrubs that'll help create that screening. It's not very wide, so this is the kind of stuff that's going to be soft. I think vines are going to be an important part of the solution, and then we also have a rain garden that's basically going to create a little bit more of that oasis feel associated with that we were envisioning as being an important part of the overall design. We're planning on pulling as much water as we can off of this roof to get into the rain garden. Then as far as the awning is concerned, we're basically going to place the ridges in the east-west direction and basically have the water drop off the edges of the roof into these micro basins and collect as much as we can off of this roof and place them where we want it. Additionally, we're planning on putting some shade canopy trees right through here. Probably desert willow is I think the planting material that Jeff has been planning. What you're not seeing is that we're planning on putting some additional shade trees right along this area. So there'll be additional layering of vegetation. Then we have a screened yard that we're going to be using for as much of the mechanical equipment as well as for the APC dumpsters, the rollout dumpsters that the Environmental Services has agreed that we can use. I know this is not really part of what you or your purview, but just want to let you get a better idea of like the layout of the building itself. It's a very small building. You know, the kitchen is going to be tiny associated with this, but Nick is a very experienced person. He knows exactly what he's doing as far as how to lay out a kitchen and how to utilize it. So we have a small kitchen area. We have a counter seating and service area. This is a small indoor dining area and with access to the bathrooms associated with the development. and then we have some prep areas, cleaning sink, and then also the walk-in freezer or the walk-in cooler associated with that. Again, sort of throughout, just randomly placed outdoor seating. It's just giving you an idea of the representation of the exterior and elevation form. Again, the metal sash windows will be replaced, reinstalled. We do have an equipment screen that we're not exactly sure how big it's going to be, but we're anticipating it's not going to be any higher than 4 feet, and we'll utilize this for shielding any roof-mounted equipment. We are actually trying to get as much as we can, as far as compressors and whatnot, into the side equipment yard. We've got a limitation to what we're going to do with that, but or how much space we have to work with, but we're going to do as much as we can. And you can see the heights associated with it. The existing structure is not very tall. Okay, so one of the conditions was to drop down to reduce the height of the shade trellis so that it was below the height of the existing awning, which we did. This is basically the main entry into the project. So this was actually a design condition that Rick Gonzalez reminded us of, is that there had to be an obvious primary entry to any kind of commercial operation as part of the IID design concept. Signage for Ugly But Honest is going to be used throughout. Here's the sign location. You can sort of see it coming through. This is the west side elevation. Same thing. You can see those trellis or the fencing materials, shade screens. And then we have a few line drawings associated with the perspectives, which actually help a lot. So this is basically the west, a view from the west, a view from the southwest, a view from the southeast, a view from the east, and a view from the northeast. Again, highlighting the main entry into the restaurant, the location of the sign. You can get a good sense of how that relationship is going to change somewhat by moving it just 22 feet. And again, the change to the overall building feeling when we start getting those windows and everything back in. This is showing from the inside patio area. You can see the shade structures are going to be stretched out down below. Just a simple metal framed building or framed structure. And again, you get a sense of like what's happening with views for the Ugly But Honest sign. The other main issue is parking and trash. And so the discussions with that have been surrounded as we presented this initially as if we were headed to get an individual parking plan. So you can sort of see our analysis of the overall transportation, parking, and entities associated with the area. There's the UGO site, a TUGO site right here, main bus lines. There's actually quite a bit of transit amenities in this area. These orange lines are where we sort of basically eyeballed and scouted basically on-street parking associated in the area, of which there's quite a bit. I mean, we very rarely see these spaces completely filled up. I think maybe lunchtime they're a little bit more filled, and when all these developments come online, I'm sure they're going to be a little bit more a little busier. But I think there's a lot of parking there, and as Maria had mentioned, Larry does own the Bosley Motors lot, and he's planning on providing a repaving striping project that actually maximizes the amount of parking in this particular space, and currently is planning to lease a little bit of space or few spaces to the Baffert and then additional spaces to the Ugly Vietnamese. Street views, go to see. Again, just another view associated with, like, get a sense of like what's happening in the area as far as parking and buildings are concerned. The Wasley lot right now is basically being lightly used. It's being occupied right now by a nonprofit, and it's been when we do the rezoning, or not the rezoning, but when we do a repaving project, I think that we've calculated out that maybe 5 spaces are actually going to be needed for this particular use. Larger view of that, just so you can get a sense. Okay, then a trash evaluation. My client, since he's a very experienced restaurateur, actually took one of his current stores, did a breakdown of like what he's been ordering every month, divided it by 4, and actually did his own sort of trash generation calculation, just as a second check. And as you can see, it's not a huge amount of space associated, or a huge generation. Well, something to be concerned about, but it's not like 2 cubic yards per week or anything like that. So right now we're planning on using the 95-gallon APCs. The city has actually agreed that 4 of them should handle this. This is its weekly generation. So right now, as you can see, the total numbers are actually a bit less than 3 APCs. And in the course of him running this business, he will be having a sort of a trash cart available to haul any overflow trash to an additional site. And what we've got now is a plan in which, if and he doesn't think this is really going to happen, if they do exceed the 4 canisters of trash in any 1 week, he would use that cart to bring the trash over to the Wasley lot. Part of what we'll be doing with the Wasley lot is installing a new trash enclosure with either dumpsters or APCs. And Larry, since he's the overall leaseholder for this property and the owner of this property, will have the authority to basically write into trash services shared use agreement. And environmental services is okay with this. He wanted to make sure that there wasn't an avenue to remove trash effectively and immediately if there was any chance of developing more trash than they were planning for at this time. Okay, and so now we're back at the vision. I appreciate your time. And I'm ready to handle any comments or questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, David. Any questions, comments for David?
I want to thank David this is John Burr, to thank him for adjusting and compensating. I wasn't able to all the requests from the various partners, including the city of Tucson, on all this. And I think you've done a great job of accommodating everybody. I wasn't able to attend PRS yesterday, but I understand that they concurred with the conditions that Armory Park placed on it. One thing that hadn't been settled at the Armory Park Historic Zone Advisory Board meeting was rooftop extensions. Can you go over what you're proposing for the screening on the mechanical up top?
Yeah, and well, and I was sort of suspecting we're gonna have to talk about that, John.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
I haven't seen.
We always like to make sure you're paying attention.
I am.
So you could, so moving backwards, you can sort of see what we've got shown right now, and whatever we place, whatever the material is, we're basically planning on using a white panel, some kind of horizontally laid panel, so it just sort of it seems to be conducive to the horizontal aspect of this building. You sort of see it there, making adjustments. So you can see right now it's that, we basically determined that probably we'd be able to get everything hidden within a 4-foot distance of what we're planning on using.
Okay.
And so we basically taken it from the, basically the 13-foot for this parapet, added 4 feet, or actually just 13 feet, then got this up to 16 feet is where we're showing it right now, just so we can be sure to enclose everything. And then like we talked about, we're going to try to put like compressors and whatnot in this equipment yard as much as possible.
Okay. I do want to do a point of clarification. Our motion was somewhat different than it's listed on the agenda. Thanks for bringing it down to 9.6. That's part of this current proposal. Thanks for replacing the polycarbonate with S-wave stuff. The current corrugated that's on the northeast corner of the property is standard S-curve stuff, correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like it's just your run of the mill. Probably was galvanized at one time, but it's painted now.
Okay. This plan still shows the Belvedere 6-inch square wave pattern corrugated for your side fence. You had at our previous meeting, you said you were happy to do an S-wave with that.
Yeah, and we still are. We put that in place because we felt that it if you look at the way these stripes work on these kind of edge conditions, you can sort of see there's almost a shadow pattern on some of these. So we just sort of picked up on that, but I'm not married to any one of these. It was just, we always have to start with something.
Yeah.
And in the course of doing a design, it was like, okay, I think this is a good way to approach it. So
the thing is, the HPG doesn't have any extant square wave corrugated.
Yeah, I know.
So for the fence, I'd prefer if it was S-wave instead of the square wave. However, up on the roof new screening, which is part of this proposal that I haven't seen, it may be more appropriate because flat panel may be the most neutral, but it may be construed as an artificial sense of history. So maybe the square wave pattern horizontally placed up there for the rooftop screening. Unless you have another material, I'm not sure because you haven't identified it yet.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think that's where we were heading with the Belvedere short rib. Is that that it didn't seem right to just do the white, flat panel. There's always issues associated with that anyway. But it was like, okay, use the correct color. The horizontal lines is something that you would see in this kind of streamlined era kind of design, but it's not really trying to copy anything. So, and since it's a new addition to the project, we thought that it was probably an appropriate approach. But I'm happy.
I'm okay with the Belvedere for the rooftop screening, but I'm not with the fence because there's fence elements in HPV.
That's an easy agreement for me to change it.
That can be put into the motion.
Sure. Another clarification. The sign is a contributing element. It's to the site. per Jody. And the Armory Park said, unless the sign could retain its historic contributing status as an element, it shouldn't be moved. And I think PRS concurred with that. To my understanding, Jody hasn't made an official ruling on this. And I think it's the city manager's office that's asked for this. Do you know any more about potentially relocating the statue? Because it could be an if and or situation.
I can chime in on this if you'd like me to.
Great,
Okay.
thanks, Jody. Yeah, I'd ask you all sorts of questions before our meeting, and the responses were really helpful. Thank you so much. I know you didn't attend that one, but we were never happy with the swap, and hopefully swaps won't happen anymore because of problems with it. But it was spawned as a response to Trinity, where mayor and council said HPZ rules prevail, and we're tired of losing contributing elements of the HPZ. Do you think that the sign could be moved and retain its status?
So I talked to SHPO about it and had requested information that you mentioned, you recall previously when the 5 Points project, beautification project was ongoing, and it was a section 106 review, section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act review, where SHPO was involved. And there was some mention apparently of the sign not being able to be moved because it would lose its contributing element status. I requested that documentation. SHPO has no record of that documentation. So it doesn't appear, I don't know where that comment came from, but it doesn't appear that
transportation
it originated from them.
It may have come from transportation staff at the time.
It didn't originate from SHPO because they have no record of it. So, and they would be the ones to make that call. SHPO was fine with relocating. They saw the plans. They were fine with it being relocated back. There's similar, and bear in mind, it's not on its own, it's not a designated resource. It's just a contributing element to the overall site, the gas station. So the gas station, even without the sign, the gas station would still be maintained as a contributing element. You wouldn't lose the contributing status on the gas station if the sign were to be relocated and not maintain its status. However, with that being said, they had no problem with it being relocated. I would just have to do some documentation and addendum to that inventory form, which I've done previously for the properties along Broadway that were located back on the lot for the widening of Broadway. So typically we just have to figure out the timing of when to do that. And that's just a conversation I need to have with SHPO again, but there's no problem to relocate it.
So you can take that, Jody?
I'm sorry, say that again, that you cut out.
You can address that and take care of that with SHPO?
Yes.
Okay.
But we can put it in the motion that you will find that we won't lose it as a contributing element by it being moved if we approve the project as presented, correct?
Yes, that can be put into the motion as well. And what I'd like to see, any other questions for David Schambach before we continue on this conversation and go to design professional findings. So are there any other questions for David Schambach?
I just want to thank him for his patience.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I got a couple of questions. I would like to see where we're trying to address the street public shading and the street borders and how that's all being resolved. I understand there's desert willows on 6th Avenue currently.
Right.
But I'm not seeing how we're meeting the shade requirements for that unless you're saying the site itself with the canopies is addressing that. But
right, and if you look, I did review the IID. It actually states that the shade canopies and buildings actually can contribute to that shade condition. But what you're not really seeing, and I appreciate your comment on this, Eric, is that there's going to be the shade trees are going to be along the street front, along both 6th Avenue and Stone. And so the landscape plan is not totally developed. The I'm going to be working with Jeff Rowdy and helping provide a shade, a proper shade evaluation detail on our site development package. And we'll be providing a landscape plan, even though I think the only thing that, because it's not a buffer yard, I don't think that the city of Tucson, the only thing they'll be checking for is making sure that we're picking appropriate species. So, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I will say you'll probably run into meeting the shade requirement for the site, especially the public walkways, and also with just the water harvesting to try to address that. So I'm not opposed to kind of overall what you're trying to show, but I think, you know, adding some additional shade trees, especially along Stone, would be beneficial to the project. I would say that in our discussions with David, that he was surprised that those desert willows were planted without his approval, because he said he probably would not accept that normally. So just be aware you may have to run into that.
Okay.
Also, with the historical context, did the neighborhood dictate a type of species they want to see there? I know that they were trying to develop a street tree, a desired street tree for the neighborhood. Did anyone present that? And Jody, or do you have any more clarifications on what they're looking to require?
I can comment too. There is no overall plan for street trees in Armory Park. We have a variety that have been placed either by homeowners or from an original tree planting plan that started in 1985 that's ongoing. I don't know about the viability. It's a TDOT corridor, so they have compliant. It's their call of what can be placed there. But it's not within the ABSAB's purview to discuss landscaping.
It's not within whose purview?
Armory Park Historic Zone Advisory Board.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I just know we had some discussions with them. We were developing a project across the street. So, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, like Eric, addressing that, I don't know exactly what the conditions of the landscape design are going to be because of because there is not a buffer yard. I mean, I guess we need we will be presenting whatever's there already, probably, and David will get to comment on it, or I can talk to him separately and sort of coordinate a final resolution directly.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my only concern is I don't see where the packet itself is compliant with what the site requirements are. So that's why I have reservation.
Right. And well, and like I said, I did look over the sections that we talked about it, and the shade structure actually is a primary part of that, and then also the awnings, the building, and then the shade trees that along Stone and 6th would be added to that whole mix. And I apologize for not having a complete representation of the landscape package as well.
And Eric, that could be included in the motion just to clarify it, so that we do on this project.
I think it's a stipulation. It's a requirement of the IID submittal. So it's fine. I mean, it can be
okay
how we want to present it, but it just should have been part of this actual submittal. That's what I'm saying. So, yeah, I mean, if it's included that what's used for the, private space is part of the public space, then there's not going to be any issue whatsoever. But if you're just to try to say you're meeting the shade component with building and trees alone, right now I'd say that'd be very difficult to do. So that's why I'm questioning it and have a concern over it. So.
Okay. Yeah, are there any more questions for David before we move on to the design professional?
No, my last thought was we should have had Robin as like special guest, because she probably would have been the worst critic.
You don't want both Sean Bucks on the same meeting at the same time.
Just a quickie, David. Are the planters in the right of way?
No,
They are on private.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to go to, we can have further questions if needed. We go to item C, design professional findings, recommendations. Rick Gonzalez.
Yes, basically we pretty much covered a lot of the findings. I would just kind of go, review pattern of what we've already discussed. So Dave, if you don't mind putting your rendering back up there, your little signature rendering in the background. Yeah, so one of my main concerns was just enhancing the entryway. That's part of the IID in regard to pedestrians and signaturing how you come into that. So they've effectively done that. Also, there's a transparency between the interior of the building and the exterior. I typically ask for night views just to kind of get a sense of how the light's flooding out and around the building. So Dave has demonstrated that here. I guess one of my questions would be, is that lighting that you show in the planting area and wall washing, is that really going to actually be in the construction documents? Are we going to have that appearance?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things, because the lights are on the exterior, we actually are going to have to adhere to the outdoor lighting code, and so we're planning on using pretty much. There may be some landscape lighting along here for step lighting, which actually would be helpful, but a majority of the lighting is going to be built into the shade canopy for the most part. So we, after this is all done, we still have a site development package that has to be submitted. We will have to have we'll have to show lighting associated with the lighting code, and we still have to get building permits. So all that will be going through the proper reviews. And then we're just enhancing, this area right here. We're going to have some down lighting right here to enhance the entry. So now I think your recommendation and about the main entry is spot on, Rick. So thank you very much.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that is an element of the IID that I think is a good one, particularly in regard to pedestrian access. Also, you showed a context. You also showed different examples of other elements that you brought into here from surrounding structures and properties. All those are relevant to the findings. Eric's talked about the landscaping and canopies. The IID primarily addresses shading in regard to having about 50% of the area shaded. So just looking at this, it's probably more than 50%, but I think Eric's comments are more relative to the softer part of the landscaping.
Right.
And
and one of the things is
Mr.
we're not showing any of the landscaping in here because we wouldn't be able to show the building. So
right, that's what I figured. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's.
But you do have one. You do have one rendering that shows trees along there. I believe it was on your site plan.
Right. We showed them just along 6th, but we didn't show them along Stone. And I know that along Stone is one of the areas they're planning on putting some shade canopy.
I want to interrupt just for a minute. Maria, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Chair, members of the DRC, just to clarify the ID requirement regarding shade, and I'm reading the code here, and let me just share it on my screen. And I have to apologize. When I accepted the application, I totally failed to make sure the applicant was including the shade requirements in their application packet. But as you can see here in the screen, right, the 50% needs to be provided on all sidewalks and pedestrian access paths, right, as measured at 2 p.m. on June 21st. So the shade may be provided by trees, arcades, canopies, or shade structures, right? So that's something the applicant still needs to address this requirement of the IID.
Okay,
And just below it says exception, the PDSD director may approve an IID plan providing less than 50% shade where compliance is not feasible to a project site's location and or building orientation, and the applicant has made a reasonable attempt to comply with this standard.
okay. So would you like, Marie, would you see that included in the motion when we get to that point?
Can we make a recommendation that the design consultant approves the shade and lighting plan as part of our motion, since those things aren't completely sorted? And also environmental, since that apparently is not completely sorted.
I think that could be in the motion.
Okay.
Maria?
Also what? What was the last part?
Environmental, lighting, and shade requirements.
Okay.
Because of site,
Environmental, I just didn't hear
Site
what word you said. So.
because of site limitations.
I want to get back to Rick Gonzalez. Do you have any other comments, Rick, findings, recommendations, aside from what we've been talking about?
Yeah, well, just to follow up on the, what we've seen on the shading, Dave, is people will present a shade study for that particular orientation, and it should very clearly identify where that shade would be relevant to your project and could be added into the submittal.
Okay.
As far as the other findings, I think as far as contacts, material selection, some of the other things that would be directly addressed by the IID, Dave has taken care of that.
Okay.
The building is really straightforward. A good part of the IID is directed toward the building itself, the exterior, the fenestration, so forth. That's there's very little relevant to that in this project other than maintaining the existing buildings. So I think overall that I find it to be acceptable to the IID,
Okay.
other than what we've discussed.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. Well, are we ready for a motion?
I could try one, but it may take collaboration.
Okay, I'm not going to give you more than an hour, John.
Okay. In the matter of IID 22-01, Ugly But Honest Pizzeria, related activity T22 SA 00204, DP 21-0171 for 733 South Stone, we find that we recommend approval of the plan has presented, including the lowering of the canopy to 9 feet 6 inches, the recommendation for the fencing to be S and the polycarp panels to be S shape. However, any rooftop panels for screening of mechanical equipment can have a square horizontal finding, and that a shade and lighting design and environmental concerns shall be further reviewed by the design professional before moving forward. Did I get everything?
I think you did.
I got nothing to add. That's awesome. I'll second.
Okay. Any other comments?
One other
Yeah.
thing, and that Jody Brown provide a letter of finding that moving the sign will not affect its contributing status to the site.
Okay.
I'll second with the amended statement.
Maria, do you have all of that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Then I'm going to take a vote. First, Maria, will you take the vote first or call out the names for the committee? How they vote?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just give me 1 second.
Take your time.
Okay. So going for the voting, Mr. Gans,
Aye.
Mr. Burr,
Aye.
Mr. Barrett,
Aye.
and Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Are you happy with that, Dave?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy.
Cool.
And
Are you
Mr.
happy with
Chairman,
it, Mr.
You
Burke?
just hold on for a minute. Maria's got the
and
floor.
Mr. Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the DRC and Mr. Shambach, I'll be requesting from the applicant the revised complete design package with all the items, that were requested by the different bodies that review this application. And in terms of the shade requirements and landscape materials, I'm gonna be asking the applicant to coordinate with David Marchewka from the Department of Transportation and Mobility, and of course with the design professional, just to make sure everybody's gonna be okay with any proposal. I just want to avoid any surprises at the development package review process at this point.
Agreed. That's a
I
good.
assume it doesn't need to come back to us unless there's huge problems. Obviously, TDOT has its purview, and then the shade requirements can be waived, correct? And
Yes,
environment.
if it,
Correct. That's why I'm kind of bringing this up, because we've had a few projects where we submitted with trees and different things, and even with approvals of the different agencies, we've gone to the construction and had issues with TDOT saying, no, you can't put trees in. So I think just trying to be more proactive about trying to address these different issues.
Okay. So we have the motion, we've got that. Can the DRC be apprised of any changes in the Cesar Chavez statute being moved at some point, just so we know, just updated on any changes with that?
Just as a point of comment, neither the neighborhood association nor ABSEP nor PRS wanted the sculpture to be there, and I know that PDSD has requested it be moved, and I understand there is a conversation to move it to the park.
Okay.
But you wouldn't believe how many working pieces there have been to all of these discussions since 2006. So there's a lot of problems with the siloization of the city departments functioning over time through various people.
Okay. Now we're finished with this part. Now we did have an earlier call of the audience with no one responding. I'm going to ask for a call of the audience. You have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone out there that would like to speak to us? Either I went deaf or I haven't heard anything. So there's no call to the audience. Item 5 is future agenda items. Maria?
Okay.
nothing.
Thank you,
Mr.
everybody.
Shamba.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
So yeah, there's different projects that we've been discussing with applicants, but nothing has been lined up yet for full submittal at this point, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And I will need probably up to 2 weeks notice because sometimes I'm not around signal. So just as you see something on the horizon, just let me know so I can place myself to do that, please.
Will do.
And, okay, there's no further business. The item 6, adjournment. We adjourn today. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your input and the time you've given.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Maria. Take care.
Thank you.
Were you happy, Maria?
Yes. Like I said, there's a lot of moving pieces for this project. It's incredible
Yep.
for such a little site.
I know. Really,
With a very odd long history. Yeah. We'll
Yes.
see where this all goes. I have heard that Scott Clark has been removed and that Thomas Tomeyer is indeed the acting department director currently. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't say removed. I'm not sure the mechanics of things.
I heard he got into general services.
change.
I understand he's no longer with
yeah.
Development Services. That's what I've heard as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Scott Clark, I believe he's gonna be working on climate change related aspects.
Okay.
I'm not sure yet if he's gonna be out of the city manager's office or any other department, but the assistant city manager, Tim, he's the one as the interim PDST director at this point.
So he'll be the one ruling on this.
Yes.
Okay, great. Just thought I'd confirm it. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Okay,
one.
take care. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.